Have you ever wondered how you are going to make that massive life changing shift and finally find the freedom that you are looking for? Well, in today's episode, we are answering that exact question, and it's not quite the answer that you think it's going to be. Welcome back to Becoming Unbound. I'm Carly Butler, and this podcast is all about breaking free of old scripts, old patterns, and finding a new style of life or writing your own script and moving closer to that version of freedom. Now, in this episode, we talk about getting there, but it's in this kind of unconventional way where it turns out Adam and I talk about how pouring more attention into yourself, getting to know yourself, and ultimately turning that love that you've been pouring out to your job, your child, your family, all these different things is actually all about turning it in towards yourself and then being able to go out in the world and find that purpose, become more aligned with your version of freedom. Adam is a relationship counselor, a coach, and an author of the Amazon best-selling book, Lessons on Love. So he helps everyone sort of turn that lens inward and really figure out what it means to live a life a little bit more on purpose and a whole lot more unbound. So, friends, stick around to the end because we are going to uncover some of the really beautiful ways that you can break those old scripts, write something new for yourself, and it doesn't always look like the way you thought it was going to be. So, grab a cup of tea, grab a notebook, and let's dive in. All right. Adam, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you. Tell everyone where you're from. It's so cool. Or where you're living, actually, right now.
Well, right now, I am living in Bali, Indonesia. I from I kind of like to say the world because I was born in Canada, raised in the Philippines. I'm half Venezuelan, and well, now I live in Bali. So, a creature of this earth.
Wow. Amazing. That's beautiful. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? We connected through a mutual friend, which was really, really beautiful. I feel like we've been on really similar paths of freedom, of breaking free from something that wasn't serving us anymore. But could you tell us maybe that moment that led up to that moment where you were like, ooh, something needs to change? And in that, kind of tell us your story, weave it in there a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, um, my story begins in an interesting place. It actually began in the Amazon jungle, and I had been living there for about 3 years. And I had been studying with traditional medicine people there. And my intention was to, be in this apprenticeship for 10, 20 years. And that was my life path. That was the vision. Uh, Little unconventional, but that yet in that place, there was this deep inner knowing 3 years into my apprenticeship. There was this disconnection with my heart. There was like this inner whisper knowing that, this isn't my path. And anyone that is going down a path and you like the certainty. The brain loves the certainty, and it's thinking, oh yes, I know this is where I need to go, and it can hold on to the known. But when I knew it wasn't my path, there was this and I actually stayed in it for a whole extra year because I had no idea, where to go. And I think many of us face that, right? We know that what we're doing is not right for us, yet at the same time, we don't know what the next step is, so we end up staying still. So eventually, I call it like the war between my head and my heart. But eventually, my heart won, and it said, "Just take the leap," right? And so I took the leap. I went, I went actually, I went this unconventional. I started off unconventional, but my heart was calling me to a more conventional route. So I went back to
Mm.
school, I studied psychology, and that sort of kind of opened up the trajectory of what I do now is in coaching and counseling. So.
Wow, I think that's so beautiful that and I like that you point out that it's you went from very unconventional to more conventional. And I think when I think about breaking free from something, I often think that I have to go more conventional or sorry, the reverse of that. You have to go more unconventional because you want to break the mold and all these kinds of things. But I think we can either way we can get trapped in these scripts of what
Mm.
our life is supposed to be, which sounds like you were, doing this kind of I don't know what you would call it, but like, fulfilling this unconventional thing, possibly because the script and the identity that you had been in and been a part of and created was like the script of being unconventional.
100%. And I think ultimately, we have to break all the scripts, right? And to be really free is just to be completely alive to what's in front of us and to be completely present to what is being called of us because we are all called in our own unique, beautiful way. And that takes a real deep listening to the moment, listening to the presence, and listening to that inner wisdom within that is guiding us where we need to go. And sometimes that's an unconventional route. Sometimes it's more conventional, and it might change back and forth, right? So it's really just being aware to what's alive right now.
Yeah, that presence piece of like, what is my next step forward? And it doesn't
Mhm.
always look like what you thought it was going to look like. So once you went to the more conventional route, how did that moment where you were, or there's obviously probably many moments in there, but what did that freedom feel like? Or did you know that you were going to a more freer version of yourself as you were breaking through that script of unconventionality that you were breaking out of?
Well, honestly, the freedom was like it was the beginning was pretty messy. I think that sometimes when we're letting go of something, there is a death that is happening. So like an old part of us is dying. And death isn't always comfortable, right? It's not always smooth, right? So when I made that leap into the unknown, there was a dying part. There was like a loss of an old me. They call this in different ancient traditions the what is it? The liminal space. So this is the in between space when an old part of you is dying, when a new part of you is actually being reborn. But there's this unknown space where it's like you're actually being reformed. So for me, in that liminal space, it was actually kind of um, uh, a little agonizing at times because I didn't fully know, well, what is being called, right? And we have to be in that listening, right? And sometimes the mind wants to grab to something really quick. It wants to grab to the easiest script that it can hold on to. And a lot of times these are the scripts from society. These are scripts
Mhm.
from, our upbringing. And we're grabbing onto these identities because we're looking for who am I in these moments. And what we really need to do is um, comes back down to that, not looking outward, but looking inward and coming within. So for me, it was definitely some reaching out and then ultimately coming back to in, but messy in the process. Yeah.
Beautiful. And what type of support? Like I'm wondering what type of support you needed during that time. When you say go inwards and kind of let go of the scripts that our bodies and minds like to grab onto for a sense of control and a sense of like an answer, because answers feel good when you figure that out. And maybe there's in that process of grieving that old part of yourself, what did you turn to people? Did you turn to therapy? Did you get, did you call in a psychic? Like, what did you use as terms of like support in that time? Because I think that is a crucial time where things can feel dark and confusing, and like grief is a heck of an emotion.
Yeah, well, I would say all of the above, right? All of the
Okay.
above. For me, I really, I mean, I'm a holistic counselor and coach, right? So I look at, we are our, we are physical beings, we're mental beings, we're emotional beings, we're spiritual beings, and these are, all different parts that need to be nurtured, right? And for me, in these times when the old part is dying, probably the most important of those is that spiritual anchor because it's this higher wisdom. It's this part that is connected to something bigger than ourselves. So whatever spiritual is for you, that could be nature, that could be the universe, it could be God, however you want to look at it, but just something bigger than us, right? Because a lot of times when we're in our problems, it's we're this small self, right, meeting this problem. And but when we can reach to that bigger self, which we are ultimately all connected to, this limitless self, and that's real freedom, and we are connected to that. So for me in that point, it was like really dialing in that my different spiritual practices, meditation, and like turning within, prayer, connecting with communities also has been important and supportive and different people because we are not in this alone, and so uh, we need to have enough vulnerability to open up to others because sometimes when we're going through challenging situations, sometimes the greatest thing we can do is open up to others and ask for that support because we don't need to do it alone. We're actually not meant to.
Wow, it's beautiful that you pointed that out because, yeah, I think saying the thing out loud, like that's one of the things that I would say you got to start doing is to say the thing that is feeling uncomfy or is feeling like, yeah, I think I want to, leave that job or leave that city that I'm living in. And the sooner you start telling people that feel safe, then the more actualized your dream of freedom or this new path that you're carving for yourself becomes. It becomes more and more real. And one thing that I really loved that you pointed out is that like the higher, greater self. And I was smiling when you said that because for me, that was my first like bigger than myself vision, and I always had like a spiritual sort of connection to the universe, but when I really started to connect it to something bigger than myself, it was just having visions of my like higher self. And now I might call that God. That's the path that I've gone through, but I started just thinking like what is my higher self, like how can she guide me? If I look to who she is and what she's doing and what she looks like and like her essence, like what is that thing? Because she's bigger and greater than me and she's guiding me on a path that like I don't even know. And I think for listeners, if the like if a faith isn't there for you and the spiritual practice doesn't quite anchor in, it could just be like the highest version of you, and that's so cool because it's personal and it's for you, but it's bigger than you. So I love that you said that. So Adam, now that you are a coach, you're helping people walk this path. You're doing a lot of the helping people do what like the work really. Um, Is there like a place that someone could start to look if they are sensing these little whispers and these like nudges from their heartstrings that are like, okay, I need to go and do something else? You mentioned like getting quiet. What are some of the
Hmm.
strategies that you would recommend for your clients or things that you went through in that time?
Yeah. So there are two things I like to recommend for that inner listening because each and every one of us are endowed with a human gift, and this is a special gift that we each all had, and that's our conscience, right? That's this inner wisdom, this knowing within us what's right, what's wrong, what's going to guide me forward. It's our inner wisdom, it's our intuition, and it's connected to that higher self that you were talking about, that we're talking about, right? It's the part of you that knows what's best for you. So this inner wisdom, your conscience, we need to develop, like anything, a relationship with it. And how do you develop any relationship with anyone? Is, taking quality time, right? How can you take quality
Yeah.
time with this other person, with your conscience? So getting still, tuning in, and I recommend journaling and I recommend meditation. So, journaling and meditation, these are really great ways to tune in with that inner self. So, um, we'll start with meditation. Now, meditation, it doesn't mean that, you need to sit down and be a monk for sit down for an hour, but just really tuning in with your breath, right? The breath is this anchor to, coming into this beautiful present moment. So, coming into your breath, I recommend, if you haven't meditated at all in your life, just sit for 1 minute. Just give yourself that 1 minute every single day and work your way up. But, creating that sacred space to tune in with your higher self, and giving yourself that time and that space. Um, there's also lots of apps out there to do it you can just kind of look for extra support. um, Insight Timer is one. I'm just going to plug this just in case for our listeners. If you have never started before, but like tuning in with meditation, I couldn't say enough about, pausing and breathing, and the science is unequivocal as well. They've researched that your intuition is heightened. They researched that your focus is better, and you're calmer and more peaceful. And you need to be calm. You need to be peaceful to see what's in front of you, right? To see clearly. So, that's meditation. And the second part that kind of go hand in hand with it is journaling. Because through that calmness, through that peace, we can ask ourselves some pretty poignant questions, like directive questions, like, what is in my highest to do? What is my highest self asking of me in this moment? What habits, ideas, would should I implement that will support this vision? And we can just start to, ask from that calm place, and then we're going to get some really good, juicy answers through that. So, meditate, find stillness, um, and journal about it. And also a shortcut, go into nature, because nature's already still and it's already calm. It's like it's already really present. So just be with, our the calmness and the presence in the tree. And there's also lots of science about that too. You spend time in nature, it'll reduce your cortisol levels, it'll make you calmer, it'll make you more focused. So spend time in nature as well.
Beautiful recommendations. And I was just sitting here smiling. Oh my God, you said so many things that I want to touch on. Um, but I never thought about the concept of like, how do you get to know someone? That's fantastic. Like, yeah, of course, you get to know someone by sitting down, spending time with them, conversing back and forth, or sitting in some amount of silence with them to see if they're, if your energies flow together. And how on earth would you get to know yourself if you didn't spend time with yourself? Like, it's so obvious, but we don't think about it that way. So I love that. And I love your suggestion of meditation just for 1 minute, and it was, a podcast, The Diary of a CEO, and he had a monk come on. I don't remember what the monk's name what but his suggestion was just meditate for 5 minutes. Like, if you can't do anything else, I guarantee you have 5 minutes a day, like, just sit for 5 minutes, and that's such a beautiful starting place, and I think if you can afford 5 minutes, then, like, you can keep getting better and better and spending more and more time with yourself. Now, I have a
Mm,
question for
mhm,
those people who are like, okay, first of all, you're telling me things that like I don't feel like I have enough time in my day as it is. And you want to sit for 1 minute and then you want me to journal and then you also want me to get out into nature. What would you say, like, if someone does kind of like push back on that? Because sometimes, like, in our modern world of like go, 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 rush, 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 we have the attention span of like, it's very hard to keep attention span. We're in short form content all the time. It's rushing to this job, pick the child up from this job, like, or make more money somehow. So you go to a second job. Like, in this kind of place that we're living in where it is so go, 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 how do you like convince yourself to do this work and to set this time aside? Like for those people who are pushing back right now, who are like, listen, Adam, I don't have time to journal. What would you say to them?
mhm. Yeah, I'd say, um, well, one thing, when you were talking about the meditation, the thing that comes to mind is there's this, uh, Zen saying, and, it says, "Everyone should meditate for 30 minutes a day. If you don't have 30 minutes, you should meditate for an hour." Yeah, so the idea is that, you'll actually make your time back because we're a lot of times when we're in this rushing mode, we're doing this, we're doing that, and we actually miss so many things. And we're actually, say you're, meditating will make you more peaceful, and so you'll be less likely to have that argument with your partner or your kid because you're, you're able to self regulate, and so you're going to save an hour there. and so there's that. You will actually make the time back, like times, I'd say like times like 100. I'm not like, and I'm not, I don't even, if you look at, you're talking about the diary of the CEO, all high performers practice some form of stillness because they realize that actually they're gaining time. So that's the one thing, if we're going to be talking about the time thing. And then, but if we're to look at just, you know, we're looking in the transition and we're talking about developing a relationship, or really, what is it worth to you, right? Like, what is it worth to you to, have a good, healthy relationship with your friend or your significant other or or your child? How important is that to have, right? And all of us will say, yeah, so important. Well, then how important is it to have like a healthy, supportive, loving relationship with yourself? So many of us, you talked about, we're going out here and a lot of times we're giving in so many places, but like, how about turning back and giving to yourself, turning within, loving yourself, right? Really, because you deserve that. I mean, you give to so many other people. It's time to go within to tend to your inner garden so that you can actually even give more. Like, that's the thing. It's like these things, they seem like, they're taking away, but they're actually like investments, like you're taking away money now, but, it's actually going to multiply by so much. And you just have to keep investing bit by bit, little bit a day. And we talked, I said, the monk said 5 minutes. I said, just sit down for 1 minute, like, I mean, so we got 1 minute,
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, it is. It's a slow investment. And I love that you're like reframing time because you might even find that if you do meditate and you do feel more peace and you are regulating better, then maybe you don't need so much mindless scrolling on your phone. And so you put down your phone a little bit more. And then all of a sudden you've gained back 15 minutes into your life because you're like, I don't really need that right now because I want to focus the energy on my job or on, on myself or something like that. I think those little moments where you dedicate that time to yourself is really beautiful. And it brings me to kind of the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about because we had talked about this before. And it's that relationship to self, but also like the love that you have for yourself. And you talked about this, like the self care and the turning inwards is really all about love. And Can you expand on that a little bit more? I know the listeners weren't there when we first had this conversation, but we talked about love, and I'd been thinking about that since our first chat, and I was like, okay, I really want to circle back to this because you're right. We give out to our job, we give to our kids, we give to our neighbors or our community or to our homes, and yet there's this massive gap that not giving to ourselves. And I'm so curious, like you you've done a lot of work, I feel like, in this space, and I'd love for you to expand on that. Like, what does that self-love really look like from your perspective?
Yeah, for me, I look at the self-love as this interconnected whole. Like in my work, I have this thing that I call the 5 pathways to love. And so we have self, we have others, we have our work, we have challenges, and we also have the sacred, which kind of holds it all. But the self, when we take care of the self, like they're in circles, and everyone is interconnected, right? So if you forget one, every part of that is going to get impacted. So if you forget yourself, then you are going to, your relationships with others are going to be impacted. Your work's going to be impacted. So when we think of self love and self care and tending to that inner world, it's really like an offering that we can give to others. And I mean, I work with a lot of people that are, they're inspired, they're givers, they're change agents. That they want to make a difference in this world. And sometimes, yeah, like you said, we can forget ourselves because we're so busy. But it's like the old airplane metaphor that um, one of the when there's turbulence, what do? We have to put our airplane mask on first before assisting another, right? And it's the same is true in our world, right? We need to tend to our inner gardens. We need to tend and nurture ourselves so that we're better equipped. And it's just like this giving and this taking. It's like an inhale and an exhale, right? All are important. We bring in this positive energy within so that we can get it out. We bring it in so that we can get it out. Because what do you get when you squeeze a lemon? You get what's inside, right? And the same is true when with us. If we squeeze ourselves with the challenges and the hardships that come our way, we're going to be squeezed and we're going to give what's inside. So if we haven't cultivated love, if we haven't cultivated kindness, if we haven't cultivated that goodness within, we're going to be sour like a lemon, right? But if we work towards, working within, making ourselves a little sweeter, maybe like an orange. So when life squeezes us, when the challenges come our way, we're better able to give that goodness, that sweetness that we've cultivated within.
That's really fascinating that if and I can imagine like trying and I think it can be really challenging because there are so many demands in our life these days that feel like it is out of control. Like we are all of a sudden not in control of who we are, and we've kind of lost sight of what we are and who what we're here to do and who we're here to serve. And I think I hear this from a lot of people, and I think there's this like, okay, well you haven't been a parent yet. And as I'm like describing this, like becoming unbound and free yourself from the scripts. And it's like, okay, well, you haven't been a parent. You haven't been sort of this. And I feel that pushback and I honor that and I see that. And I'm like, no, you're right. I don't have a lot of responsibilities. And as much grace as I can give myself, I feel like there's also like I would encourage any parent or someone who is giving themselves to something other than themselves, like, what does your child or your community think when you don't have yourself? When, like, your cup isn't full, how c what are you pouring into your child or into your family or into your community? Like, how is that going to play out? Is that serving anybody if you haven't taken the time to sort of, like, understand and serve yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, in my own, I another little side story, where, I'm very, community oriented and, do a lot of, community work. And I was in a situation where I was, um, just giving and giving, doing a lot of doing a lot of activism. And, I was in a lot of different campaigns and different things, working towards justice and all that good stuff. And at the time, I had just been giving, giving, giving to the point when I was actually literally like, I burnt out, right? Yeah, I was, and to the point where I was, uh, I guess floored. They say that, if you don't listen, there's a saying that says, if you don't listen, well, life speaks to you in a whisper. And if you don't listen, then it might shout at you. And if you really don't listen, then the universe is going to hit you with the cosmic two by four. And so I got hit by a cosmic two by four, and a tree fell on me. And it actually, it put me down for about 2 months. And I was in bed, and I was forced to really contemplate, like, oh, wow, how did I get here? How did I get into this situation of just, and it came, and through that awareness, I realized, wow, I'm giving in depletion. I'm not fully, and it was actually what I was giving from, if I'm fully honest, it's like I was giving from this sense of not enough, right? It wasn't giving from a sense of fullness. It was giving from a sense of, I think a lot of giver can probably relate that, if, I was equating part of my worth, especially because it was part of an identity. It was part of a script that I was holding, right? And that, if I gave a lot, and I felt good about giving, and then when that was taken away, and um, who was I, right? So for me, when I was floored in that place, and I started thinking, well, what do I really need to do to support my inner world, right? And I started actually getting more aligned, right? I started getting more aligned with my purpose. I started getting more aligned with what was alive to me. And I realized that some of my giving wasn't actually, coming from my place of the heart. It was actually coming from a place of the social media, what people would think about me, but it wasn't my truth, right? It wasn't what I needed to do. All right. And so, for me, uh, that is really about, when we nurture ourselves, and when I nurtured myself, when I brought myself that love, it put me more in tune with my purpose. And so when I'm working with clients and helping them uh, get in touch, is like really like, and I work with parents. I'm a parent myself, right? So I know that, like, we actually do have to give more of ourselves, right? We have to let go of like what I want so many times. And that's like just part of being a parent. There's what I want, and then there's what has to happen right now. And that's taking care of this child and supporting them in certain ways. And so uh, when I'm working with parents or others, right, it's like, one, helping them like nurture themselves so that they can give more, right? And realizing that, I even had a parent come to me, and they came to me to develop a better relationship with their son, right? And there was a lot of conflict with the son. They were getting into fights a lot. He was a preteen, so there was a lot of like kind of that. So they came to me with this initial challenge, right? But how do we go to support that initial challenge of the conflict outside? Well, one, there was a conflict inside. So she had to work actually within herself to find more peace, to find more love. And she realized that so much of the stuff that she was actually projecting, there's so much of the stuff that she was putting on her son, it was actually projections of things that she was feeling inside. So there's that lemon metaphor again, right? That I shared. And so really we want to we want to nurture that love within so that we can give it without, right? That's really just how it goes, and when we do that, everything we do, we're talking about purpose. Your purpose becomes more clear because you're more authentic, you're more true to who you are, and you're doing what your soul is asking you to do rather than what you should do or what your ego is telling you to do. Because I'm really all about like your inner wisdom, your soul, your higher self. It knows the way, and it is always going to instruct you to something that is going to be life supportive, right? And that's not just for you. It's for everyone, right? And a lot of times, sometimes people like, well, my soul is telling me that I need to, like, I don't know, you know, be a TikTok influencer. Maybe that is what your soul is telling you to, but a lot of times it's just the social mirror that is telling you what you think you should do. So a lot of times people, even in this, when they're in a life transition, they're going to do what they have been programmed to do. Because since we were children, we have been programmed by society to think a certain way. We have these scripts that we started talking about, right? There are these scripts. And, before it was, get a good job, make a fine, make, uh, you know, have the white picket fence and your three kids and life is good. These are sort of some of the scripts, and we also do have a script that now, like, a script is also to, like, uh, be a digital nomad and live anywhere, right? That's also a script that people just feel like that's the best thing in the world. But is it for you, right? Is it for your soul, right? So we have to tune in and really come back to that stillness that we were talking about right in the beginning.
Yeah, those scripts, they get ya. And yeah, you don't have to just because you're, becoming unbound and unsticking yourself from the old life. I'm like, nobody is telling you that you have to go out and create your own online business. Like, yes, there's value to that. And if that is your calling, I'm sure you will find it. But going out and being a content creator is not like for everyone. That doesn't necessarily have to be the next step to freedom. And I think that that's really just important to know because it could be something more mundane. Like, maybe you do just go back to school to be, a
Mm.
plumber or an electrician, or maybe like that's how you're going to serve your community or the people around you. And I think it's so interesting that you brought up like the scripts of and
Mhm.
serving even when you felt like it wasn't for the actual cause, it was to help yourself feel better about how the world was going to view you. And I think in some of these first careers that we get into or first, things that we do, sometimes those decisions are so based on those scripts that we have to start differentiating between like why am I doing this by getting quiet, getting in a relationship with yourself? Like, even I realized, oh my gosh, and exactly this ties exactly to where you are. I was going to go to Bali to be a yoga teacher and to be an instructor. And like that, I thought was going to be my path. And then once I sort of I changed directions and I was like, "Ooh, I think I wanted people to want me to be a yoga instructor because that was very cool. It was very nomady of me. It was very adventurous. If it was very spiritual, which was understood by people. And then all of a sudden I sort of took off the rose-colored glasses and I looked around and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if this identity belongs to me anymore." And maybe it just shifted, but I started realizing that it wasn't about like what I wanted. It was about how I wanted others to view me. So I did not go and become a yoga instructor in Bali.
Mm.
So Adam, I ask everyone on the podcast what your version of freedom is, and there's always so many beautiful, wild, different answers. So I'm curious, what is your version of freedom in this new path that you have chosen for yourself?
Mm. Yeah, well, for me, uh, freedom really comes down to, it's this inner game. When I think of real freedom, I think of people like Nelson Mandela. So here we have someone who is unjustly put in prison, and so many of his, external freedoms were taken from him, right? And here he is also in the face of racism, in the face of hatred, in the face of all this negativity, making the decision and choosing to love, choosing to forgive, choosing to be peaceful, despite the external circumstances. So for me, real freedom is this, it's this inner game, it's this inner world, because there are days in life when it is going to be really sunny and it's going to be beautiful. And there are days when it is going to rain on our parade, right? And it's going to rain, and it's going to rain hard. But the question is, can we smile just the same, regardless of the sun or the rain? Because here is the thing: we all love the sun and we all love roses, but we ain't going to get the roses without the rain. So we need that. And freedom is knowing that. For me, it's really knowing that and finding that peace regardless of what is going on. And the beauty of this is that if we're in a life transition, if we're moving and we're moving, if we're stepping away and looking towards something else, we don't need to quit our job right now. We don't need to like actually be in that next thing to get to there. We can actually be free right this very moment. Right this very moment, we free. And it doesn't mean that we don't pursue it. It doesn't mean that we don't go towards what's calling at our soul, but it means that every step of the way we can be free. We don't have to like climb the summit and we get to some, goal and say, "Oh, now I'm here." Because the problem with that thinking is then, we're always looking for somewhere else. We're always looking for the next summit and the next horizon. And, as we know, the old adage, it's really about the journey. It's about the
Mhm.
process. And the journey can be beautiful every step of the way, not just the summit. So,
I love that. So important to keep in mind that, yeah, you can feel free exactly where you're at. And it could just look like using more of those tools like meditation and journaling to get yourself sort of through that journey. But that's really beautiful. Adam, if people want to know more about the work that you do, more of how you work with people, and what you've kind of been up to. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where people can find you and what you kind of offer?
yeah, well, I think particularly for the conversation that we're having right now, I have like a couple of websites depending on your
Okay.
pathway. So if you want like a life transitions, like I think you're in this part of a life I have a nice little guide called the purposeguide.com. It's called purposeguide.org. And you can find a little map there that'll kind of take you through your life transitions, some tools that will help you, some reflective prompts that will kind of guide you there. So recommend you go there. If you're working with more of that inner critic, sort of self-love stuff, and also looking to deepen your relationships, lessonsonlove.org. Lessonsonlove.org. I have a book there, as well as some awesome resources where I take you through those 5 pathways to love that I spoke about earlier. So that's where you can find me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for all of your, those little golden nuggets I call them of like wisdom, and hopefully they landed, and hopefully everyone can carve out 1 minute of time every day to do a 1 minute meditation and just sit down and start that relationship with yourself. I think that's a really really beautiful place to start, cuz how else do we get to know other people? Same way we need to do that for ourselves. All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Adam. That was so beautiful. And hopefully, you can learn to, take that 1 minute for yourself and pour a little bit more into your cup so that you could go and serve and find your purpose and find that freedom that you are looking for. All right, my friends, I will see you on the next episode of Becoming Unbound.